Good evening, good evening, good evening. If you've been watching all season, you're probably not used to seeing three faces on the screen at one particular time. No, you're not drunk yet. You're not seeing triplet. Even though we might not all be twins, we're all fantasy football IDP brothers. And we're going to bring you week 6 coming up next. It is Friday night. It is probably the best night to talk fantasy football, and most definitely the best night to talk IDP fantasy football. And I can't think of two other people I would rather talk IDP with than my friend Jorge Edwards and Hollywood Titan. Gentlemen, how are we on this fine Friday evening? Hollywood, any beers in hand?
Unfortunately, no.
That's
I've
okay.
got to. I got to hit the hay after we get done. I got to work tomorrow.
Same here every Saturday. So I feel you. Jorge, welcome in. Welcome back. Good 2 weeks in a row. And congratulations on your physical therapy. You are trending in the right direction.
Exactly.
Yep. There's a better chance of you playing than Jalen Phillips at this particular moment. So,
and it sucks that both of you have to get up early tomorrow. So I will be drinking for the both of us, for all three of us.
The old yellowtail.
Good old classy yellowtail, the Cabernet Merlot blend.
Oh yeah, can't beat that. Drinking out of a beer stein. That's
exactly
the epitome of class, elegance, and bougie. That speaks IDP.
Yeah.
Who am I talking about? I'm 80% wine on these evenings, and nothing for me. But I do have, I would say, a lot of injury news that will make you feel drunk if you have most of these players. So there's that, I guess, if that's a positive.
You want to whine about something.
Yay, there you go. Yeah, I like that.
That's often during the show.
Son of a bitch. Look at that. He's back and better than ever. Let's hope that next week we will say Jalen Thompson will be back. Arizona Cardinals safety, nickelback, whatever he wants to go be defined as. He was trending from did not practice to now he's officially out this week with the hamstring. Here's a name. I want you guys to tell me. Andre Chicheri. Is that how you say it? And do you know much about said player? I can tell you he has played 221 snaps. Nearly a quarter of those have been in the box. So that's a positive, I guess, if we're looking for box snaps. The Rams, the opponent this week, do have a penchant to give up points to box safeties as they've done all year. But something tells me that that's not going to be Andre Chicheri. It'll be Kevon Wallace. Correct, Jorge?
Yeah, so I have Chanat heard his name before, as opposed to Chicheri. Let's see here. Looking at yes, you're right. He has played predominantly. No.
Not predominantly. I said 25%. That's not predominantly. Yeah. That's one quarter.
No, predominantly, it's Kayvon Wallace in the box. So I'm still rolling with Kayvon Wallace until Buda Baker gets back from injury.
That is correct. But
if he even does get back, like if they start going down a path where they're not even competitive, it makes you wonder: do they even bring him back and let Kayvon Wallace roll for the rest of the season?
I mean, I can tell you right now, I would think that if I'm the Eagles, I'm thinking, man, how nice would it be to have, Wallace there, and nothing against Reed Blankenship, but they're also going to be without, or at least potentially with their safety, Justin Evans. No, Justin Evans is out, so they're out of safety as well this week. Safeties galore. There's a lot of safeties on this list. We'll bounce from position to position so we don't just pile up on any one. Let's go to the outside edge rusher, offensive or defensive end in Odafe Owe again. Hollywood, who the hell's going to pick up the slack in Baltimore?
Well, that's a good question. Luckily for them, you don't have to pick up much slack because you're playing the Titans. So
touche. But that's a great. Do you see like a significant, I'd say, player for Baltimore that could occupy or at least create enough pressures to be just downright dangerous this week? Because we know the Tennessee offensive line is weak, and we know they like to allow pressure to get to our friend Ryan Tannehill. But who would you feel the most, I'd say, trusting in Baltimore?
I was kind of looking at this earlier for my sack lunch, possibly, and I kind of, well, I don't know, but
yeah, you lost your appetite looking at that, didn't you?
Yeah. Honestly, if you look at their team, they're getting it from two, well, I don't want to say unlikely sources, but it's coming from their safety, Kyle Hamilton, and then it's coming from Patrick Queen, right? Because he's got 2.5 sacks. So maybe it's one of those that's the guy that applies most of the pressure. I mean, you got Roquan too, so maybe it's not necessarily your defensive line, and maybe it's your linebackers.
It's one of the things last week against Washington. I thought there was a good exploitable scenario for both Queen and Roquan. I thought Kyle Hamilton would do that, but we've seen his pass rush snaps go, spike, and he has 3 sacks. Then they drop down to 4 or 5. And then luckily Marcus Williams is back, and I think that puts Kyle Hamilton in the box even more. Hopefully that means they blitz heavy with Hamilton. If we could get another, in Kings Classic, 70-point production out of Kyle Hamilton, I could use it. I don't expect to see that. Sorry, Jorge. It is what it is. Carolina. Go ahead.
I said it's early. We still got time.
Oh, yeah, we got time. We got plenty. People coming back. It's good times. And this about week 6 when all the guys who are hurt are starting to make their way back. It's like the best waiver wire is when your own injured players come back to the team. So we'll be optimistic. I would assume that Carolina Panthers will have that same feeling in a couple weeks, maybe when they don't have the laundry list of players that are out and or hurt or potentially going to miss. I mean, on the offensive side, as well as now on the defense, Derek Brown missed practice, Brian Burns, Xavier Woods. It's a little thin there in Carolina. I'm not quite sure exactly who's going to fill the gaps there per se, or if anybody needs to, but Von Bell also out now. And that's what leads me to this next question. So we know Xavier Woods is out. We know Shaq Thompson is out, has been. We know with Von Bell, does that mean, can we possibly be opportunistic and optimistic that Jeremy Chinn will see snaps this week? Jorge, optimism scale of 1 to 10.
So look, I know, the whole Illini connection. Did he go to Illinois or did he go to
Southern Illinois?
Southern Illinois.
The Salukis.
I know the connection. I lost a pie bet. I posted the video of said pie bet of doubting Jeremy Chinn from a few years ago. Yeah, he's going to get snaps. Absolutely. I mean, who else is there to fill in the gaps there?
I don't know, but this is the same conversation that I had to an extent 3 weeks ago when it was like, all right, they lose 2 linebackers. They're out Xavier Woods. They're out another, safety steps. We've got to see Jeremy Chinn, step in and play significant snaps. And then, wow. And that's the overarching theme song to Jeremy Chinn's season as a whole. But, I mean, he hasn't done much with the snaps that he's had. Like week 3, he actually had 58 of the 75 snaps, turned into 5 tackles. Whoop-de-doo. Nothing much in the way of any splash plays. It's been very frustrating with his usage. But I think this will be the week that are you starting? All right, let's say defensive back 3, or like maybe who would you rather? Is there a how confident or comfortable are you with a Jeremy Chinn this week?
Is it so you're asking like other people that fall into DB3 and see whether or not I'm comfortable with them versus Chinn?
That is pretty much where I would say if he sees significant snaps based on historical trends,
right,
he should be in that general ranking. So let's talk about some defensive backs there. Let's say Jeremy Chinn or J. Ron Curse.
I would take both Curse or Wilson over Chen.
Okay. How about? Well, we know what L'Jarius Sneed did, so he's already out. That doesn't count. How about Tracy Walker against Tampa?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
without Brian Branch, I don't disagree. Here's
How
one.
about his own teammate, Sam Franklin?
That's a great question.
Mm.
I feel
I'd
more
take Franklin.
I feel more comfortable that Franklin's going to play more snaps, and that in itself is going to lead me to the promised land. I'll say this against Miami, they're not exactly the most generous to multiple safeties. So, I mean, it's going to be one or the other, most likely. But
So here's a question I got for you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather play Josh Metellus or Jeremy Chin? Knowing that Metellus. Yeah.
Yep. I trust him more. He's not going to give you. He's not going to give you. Well, I'm not going to say he's not, but odds are he's not going to give you the huge games, right? But you can pencil him in for 6 or 7 tackles every week and be all right with it.
Yeah, Chicago was. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying he was consistent. And this point of the game, you know, we're 6 weeks in. We're almost halfway of the fantasy season, so at this point, you need consistency, something you can trust. So I would take Metellus easily.
Yeah, I mean, him and Bynum both have been pretty much near the top of the leaderboard as far as their individual tackles. Cameron Bynum is one who I'm really interested in. It's interesting with Justin Fields in that all of his, and I think I talked about this in the start and sit column and some of the IDP roundup, is that Justin Fields has no interceptions thrown to the actual cornerback position, which is ironic when he has 5 of them. They've all been to a safety or a linebacker, which tells me under pressure makes a bad throw. Obviously doesn't see the linebacker or safety up in the box there. And I think maybe that could be a Cameron Bynum type situation. It's kind of just bullshit throwing throw shit against the wall and see what sticks by saying that, because I have no clue if it's going to be Cameron Bynum or not. But the odds are there more so than others, so I'm going to move up just a smidge, if you will. All right, let's talk about one of the biggest injuries last week. Did you see what happened with the injury to LV Leighton Vander Esch, the slingshot concern that they had? So San Francisco, I guess historically, has been known to do this slingshot play which is impressive, because if you're that good to do this, where your offensive lineman can just, and this was Trent Williams, took the defensive, basically I don't remember who it was, if it was one of the other linebackers or one of the defensive ends, and threw him into Leighton Vander Esch on the block. Yeah. And so that's and I'm like, how the hell is that how is that a scenario? Like, yeah, that's what they do, is they just, he just chucks his own player. And that's what he did he threw Leighton Vander Esch into him. And that's when his head went down, and that's how his neck got hurt on that play. They call that a slingshot. Look it up sometime, and you'll see. It's crazy that they are blaming the 49ers offensive line for said injury. But I don't think he plays the rest of the year, personally. I hate to be negative, but I worry about his career as well. Cervical surgeries, etc.
Multiple.
I would agree with that.
So,
and you said they had signed
Rashaan Evans
2 days ago.
They did.
If he plays like the Rashaan Evans from last year, LVE might be done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In Dallas.
Yeah. Well, they brought him back. What was it, a 1-year deal this year in free agency, right?
Yeah,
something like that. Short term.
Yeah, and I'm really, if we see, like you said, just anywhere close, I don't expect to see a top 15 tackle season out of Rashaan Evans again, but it's not outside the realm of possibility for him to be an LB2, LB3 going forward each week, especially if it's him and they don't trust. Like Damone Clark has been, and this will tie in, money or mirage with Damone Clark, because you guys know, you've heard me say his name so much this year. It's kind of like finally for, Nate gets restitution to put his favorite guy out on the field and not feel bad about snaps, but I still worry about snaps. But with Rashaan Evans, because Damone Clark has been, inconsistent at times. Still no missed tackles, which is a positive. But Jorge, money or mirage for Damone Clark is an LB2, LB3 rest of the season.
Rest of season. Mirage.
Okay. How about LB3, LB4?
Money.
Okay.
More 3-4. Definitely money. Definitely more 3 weeks than 4 weeks, I would say. Again, it really comes down to how productive Rashaan Evans is stepping on the scene.
Yeah.
We just don't know. I mean, there's a reason why Atlanta got rid of one of their highest tackling linebackers last year, and I don't think it was just all money.
No other team has picked him up through 6 weeks either, which is
right.
Which is something. I don't know what that is,
right?
But it's something. Now that's a great point, and that's something to monitor going forward. But hopefully this week, Chargers aren't the best matchup for opposing linebackers. The Chargers are actually the worst matchup against opposing linebackers, which makes me a little concerned with Damone Clark. But maybe if people are hesitant to pick him up and he has a bad week, it's a buying opportunity for him. We'll see. You never quite can tell. Brian Branch, Detroit Lions, didn't practice today with an ankle injury. No designation completely. On a positive note, Devin Lloyd appears to be on the right track to play. Got in limited practice after the thumb surgery. Devin Lloyd stepping back in. Hollywood, are you comfortable starting Devin Lloyd in, as we'll say in deep leagues, LB3, LB4 this week, or do you want to give him another week to, get ready?
I mean, if you're kind of strapped at the position, right, then you almost have to start him. And I think he'll do all right. I would feel better if I had another option as my third linebacker or whatever for one more week, because he's missed a couple weeks. So maybe if you've got somebody a little better for 1 week, then you give him another week to get back to in shape, or not in shape, but back in the swing of things. So
yeah, that makes sense. Jorge, what do you think as far as split playing time with Chad Muma? Do you think Devin Lloyd fills a 70% role, higher or lower than 70% of the snaps?
I think higher. I think if it was just like a 1 or 2 week, injury, I think maybe they would have been a little bit more conservative, not to let it get to potentially a worse situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he's had all this time to recover, I feel like if you give the guy enough time to recover, then he should be good to go. The more time he has to rest and heal,
Yeah. No, I think that's Muma hasn't exactly impressed. It has been a, disappointment for the opportunity, but I get it. They've been in some weird matchups. I'd like to say hello to you too, Preston. Preston has been fantastic with all of his content. It's really good to have him. If you ever want to jump into the IDP realm, Preston, we are more than happy to let you come on and talk. I mean, you get such opportunities to talk about Joey Bosa, who didn't practice. Shocker. Alohi Gilman didn't practice. Who cares? Ernest Jones didn't practice. Now, that one is one that has kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I know he was, I don't want to say banged up, because I don't think that's a fair way to explain a person who just got done playing every snap. So it wasn't like he left the game, but during the game, obviously it was worse than others. Coming off a huge week against the Eagles. What are we doing with Ernest Jones if he sits? Is Christian Roseboom someone that you're going to even put into like desperation play, or are you just saying I'm avoiding that linebacking core altogether, Hollywood?
Oof, that's kind of rough. I mean, again, right? Unless you just have to, I think I'll avoid the situation. Hopefully you've got enough depth on a linebacker that you can kind of move a piece in or around,
Yeah. What do you think, Jorge? Any optimism for Christian Roseboom if Ernest Jones is out, or is there another name I'm missing?
No, like you the past month since week 2, he's got a 14.3% missed tackle rate. Yes, the solo assist is good. That helps out definitely. But Jake Hummel, not exactly somebody who on the Rams line,
Yeah.
I'd be going after. I think I'm with Hollywood. I would avoid this situation for the Rams in terms of linebacking options.
Yeah, you're with me too, for sure. All right.
Cool. So
Unfortunately, slot corner Nate Hobbs, one of my favorite plays going into the season. He did not practice, not trending in the right direction. We spoke earlier about Jalen Phillips, limited practices. As Jorge, as you had alluded to, when he doesn't play, it is really, really impressive for Van Ginkel because he doesn't have to play those inside linebacker slot snaps. He's exclusively on the edge. His pressure rate has been phenomenal. He just looks really good. I talked about it off air. I don't care if they sit Bradley Chubb personally. I know there will be Dolphins fans that tell me I'm stupid and I don't know ball. Is that the easiest just bullshit way to tell a person like they don't care what your opinion is because you don't know ball? How do they know who doesn't know ball and who knows ball? What
does that even mean? Like I'm sorry, not everybody is there are 32 head coaches in the NFL, 32 people in the world who are head coaches of a football team in the NFL. If you're not one of those 32, guess what? You probably don't know as much ball as they do either. So that's one. You know what you can do? You can look on a TV or look at some all 22 footage and see this player goes here, makes plays. This player went there, missed a play. And you know what? They can also do math and look at numbers. And you put that all together and you can learn things that can help you know ball. So for those who come at you or come out with anybody saying they don't know ball, like, probably know more than you, buddy. Or
good
gal.
thing is, I will say this. You know who knows ball? Our friend Chris, Detroit Beastie. He knows ball. And I know that I missed him at the Expo this year. So hopefully next year we rectify that situation and we can talk some ball next year and get down to business. But I will say, if there's one area that I've had this conversation before, I do believe this. I believe that the IDP group, the people that talk about it, have a tendency to, in my opinion, to want to get to the conversation of football more than fantasy, and then let football lead to fantasy conversation versus fantasy conversation leading into football conversation. So don't know if that's means anything more or less. Not criticizing anything, but you two know ball. So there you go. You're welcome. I don't know if the New York Giants are going to do anything, I would say, positive on the pass rush scene with Azeez Ojulari out this week. And here's an interesting little stat. Kayvon Thibodeau. What would you guys think? And overall, without looking up any statistics and just his season as a whole, what would you think Kayvon Thibodeau's season would look like? Would you say, I think he's had a pretty productive season so far? Let's generalization. What's you two's impression without looking anything up? Because I was pretty blown away by these two stats going hand in hand or not going hand in hand.
To the best of my knowledge, I would say he's a little less than average right now, from what I can remember.
So what if I told you he had 11 tackles through 5 games, 11 tackles, 4 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, 1 pass defense, 1 fumble recovery? We would say I think that's pretty decent, right?
Yeah.
Now,
the sacks are a little higher than I thought they were.
Same here. Now, what if I told you that those same numbers, when you look at, now I am going to use PFF's pass rush grades. Take it for what it's worth if you want to talk about pass rush grades. But if we look at the win rate, we all know what win rate is, correct?
Sir.
Yes, sir. Win rate is the amount of times you can beat your defender, and that allotted like 2.5 seconds. Kayvon Thibodeau has the 4th worst win rate in all of football at 4.9%. I don't know what to.
Maybe he had like a good game versus the Giants, though, which was kind of an anomaly. Maybe I'm.
He is
well, that tells me that he's getting
I'm sorry. Versus
a lot of volume.
Versus the Seahawks. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He did. Yeah. He's had 4 sacks over the last 3 games. San Francisco was a fluke. Seattle, he had the 2. and then Miami this past week. I don't know. I think against Buffalo, it's going to be. I think it's going to be bad. I moved him down quite a bit. I don't know why we're doing about Kayvon Thibodeau. I think I just was mesmerized by how bad of a like actual like metrics are, and you know, BST thinks it's dog shit season from Tibbs. You know what? There we go. That's an answer. That is not, and Hutch is way better. Hutch is I had a little bit of a conversation. Someone said he's top 10 defensive lineman. I said he's top 3, and top 2 is knocking right now. And it's,
I'd say he's pushing for defensive MVP right now.
Hey, I'm not questioning that at all. I can tell you, I wish I was a Detroit Lions fan. I'm just kidding. I can't say that. But I do wish I was an Aiden Hutchinson fan to watch day in, day out. I'm just kidding. Hey, they beat my Chiefs, so I'll beat you to it, Chris. You don't have to talk about that anymore. That's for sure. But yeah, and to Jorge, as you put in the chat, please, JAC, head over on Sunday morning for the offense. It's I want to talk offense. I love it, but I feel that we have way too much IDP to get through to talk about. This week, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, is more like the Walking Dead, basically. Nakobe Dean, limited practice. Justin Evans is out. Darius Slay's out. Jalen Carter out. That one hit hard. That one's shocking. I still think the Eagles probably dominate the game, but how high up, Hollywood, were you putting? Was Jalen Carter starting to creep into your just not defensive tackle heavy leagues, but like your overall defensive lineman leagues? Was he into that defensive lineman 2-3 range for you already?
Yeah, he like you said, he was starting to creep up there, right? I would a little bit more closer to the 3 range than the 2, but he was trending in the right direction. So yeah. This one kind of stings, especially if you're in a position-specific league. This one really stings.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. You probably got benefit is that you have him as like your defensive lineman 4 or 5, just because as a rookie, it's, you know, he probably wasn't too hyped. But yeah, it hurts because I really, really like him as a player, and it helps out Josh Sweat, and it helps out Hassan Reddick by having him in the middle, but they get Fletcher Cox back, which is always important. Preston wants to know, guys, is win rate beating the man in front of him, or is that getting to the quarterback? And that is beating the man in front of you within a 2.5 second range. So it's like, you know, a pressure can happen by me just getting beat, and then the quarterback scrambling left and then coming back, and then me happen to be in the right position and getting a QB hit or any of the other metrics. So I don't think win rate's the end all be all, guys, but I think that it's a pretty good identifier of underlying like pass rush ability. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Win rate, pressure rate. I mean, however you want to, both of those metrics go a long way into telling you opportunity that these players are placing themselves in. And so that, I mean, it's, you know, for those who are a little intimidated by IDP because they're new to it, I mean, like, look, it's the same thing as offense. You want your players to be placed in the best opportunity. You want, you know, the wide receiver to run routes at a depth that the quarterback is on average, you know, targeting receiving options. You know, you want the running backs that get the high volume, get them more touches, both in the receiving game and as far as, and the rushing attempts. Because you want that opportunity. Opportunity is key for everything, whether it's IDP or for offense.
Yep. And you can make numbers look however you want, kind of. I mean, you really can. You can turn them good or bad, however you want to twist them. Like Jorge said, the volume, that shows you he's getting the volume, right? So here's my thing. I'm like, okay, he's getting the volume, but his win rate is low. Yeah. So what if this win rate of his starts trickling up now? He starts beating people. Well, you already talked about how good he was with a low win rate. He starts getting that win rate up, those numbers are going to be even better than what they are. So,
or that doesn't happen, and now you start wondering: is this a one-hit wonder, or are this fluke performances? Is this somebody that you can count on consistently versus just having a blow-up game? Mm-hmm. So there are different ways you can look at it. I think
exactly.
I think one thing that's really cool, is we're getting to, like I said, week 6. Now we're getting past the early window of the year where it's like, oh, they're trying new things. It's like, no, now these defensive coordinators are sticking to the players that they trust in key positions, and we're able to kind of decipher more clearly who gives you the best matchups.
Yeah, and it actually, it negates like what I said. The Dolphins fans, when I was saying about Bradley Chubb and like get Van Ginkel in more, Bradley Chubb in 180 pass rush snaps on the season possesses a 14.6% win rate, which is 15th overall amongst edge rushers. That is a great metric. It's backed up by, a handful of sacks. If you dig further down and you get to someone like, the question marks of like Calais Campbell. And I use that name only because he has a positive, like 12.1% win rate, no sacks on the season. At some point you have to go, do I want to buy in that he is a bounce back and will have a good second half? Probably more so that it's easy to look at that number of like, say, Will Anderson, who only has, the one sack, but he has a 16.4% win rate. Will Anderson is the guy that if you're going to invest in going forward is a person that I would say would be like that. If you could buy low, in like redraft dynasty, you're not going to be able to get Will Anderson probably easier, but in a redraft, if you have an opportunity, especially with the Texans offense, the offense is starting to click. They're starting to get ahead in games. You're going to force other teams to pass against them. And that might put Will Anderson in a good scenario. No, Jorge, you cannot have Will Anderson in our IDP league that we made trades in. So should have looked that up earlier. You might've got him from me. Jordan Brooks didn't practice. That's a rough one. Hopefully he's good to go for game time, but never good not practice on a Thursday. Did he not practice on Friday too? Let me look at that, because last I saw, I only looked at his Thursday numbers, but he got a full practice in today. So Jordan Brooks, I'm comfortable with going forward. Dre Greenlaw, another person who didn't have a practice. Dre Greenlaw is a tricky one sometimes, guys, because he has a little more of an injury history, but it went from a DNP of non-injury related to did not practice Thursday, but he got a limited practice in today. Jorge, thumbs up or thumbs down for Dre Greenlaw this week? You think he's going to play?
He'll play.
There you go. Like it. Like your optimism, my friend.
Well, he was questionable last week too, and he ended up coming out and playing against the Cowboys. So, yeah. Unless it's something even more severe.
Uh-huh.
And part of me remembers like he had like a hamstring injury in training camp all through the month of August, and yet he still has been playing every week. So I don't see why this is any different.
No, that's fair. It's the only thing is it's just Drake Greenlaw. So we know that name just evokes a little bit of fear in terms of injury concern. But my biggest concern is with the 49ers being so dominant that they just don't play a ton of defensive snaps. Last week they were 28th with only 49 snaps on the field, and the blowouts, they didn't need them. But week in and week out, I love me some Drake Greenlaw. And then last but not least, we talked about Von Bell, but Matt Milano, big loss for not only Buffalo defense, but for IDP managers, fractured leg and the ACL. He's out for the season. Last week, we saw them bring in Tyrell Dodson. Initially, he missed a couple tackles. Then they went the way of Dorian Williams, and he missed some tackles. Then Tyrell Dodson came in and finished up the rest of the game. We'll do a little bit of a money or mirage with those two. Hollywood, choose one of the two and then tell me, do it this way. Is there a money of the two going forward? Yes or no?
Yeah, but you mispronounced his name. The correct saying is AJ Epinesa.
Well, that's not an interior linebacker.
Yeah, but he's picking up a lot of slack off the edge, though, as an outside guy. But if I had to pick, I would pick. I'd probably pick neither one. Yeah. I mean, I guess Dodson, because he's got the more experience. I guess it'd be him and Bernard in the middle.
Well, and that's the only reason I'm using those two, because I agree. AJ Epinesa is the benefactor of the pass rush snaps that you wanted, that you're going to see.
I guess I would go. I guess I'd go Dodson just because he has starting experience just overall more experienced than Williams. I think Williams is the better player, but him being so green and raw as a rookie, it's kind of hard to put a lot of faith in him right now. So again, if you're struck with injuries and you're in a pinch, I'd probably go Dodson.
What about you, Jorge? Are you thinking either one of those two is a money play, or are they both just mirages that you can avoid?
So I would go as I add him to my roster. I would go Dodson. I know it's sacrilege to say this. I feel sorry for the guy for what breaking his leg. I think we're talking about Milano on Sunday. But by the way, before I get into this even further, did you see the video of them at Tottenham Stadium converting the field from a soccer field to a football field?
Yeah, they basically put green spray paint down.
No,
so there you go.
Yeah, it's like concrete, and then they just put the turf or whatever on top of it. Like, unreal. And so apologies for speaking ill of Matt Milano, but when we're looking at coverage snaps, while Milano had obviously more than Dodson actually has been playing a little bit better, has been grading out better, in pass rush and in coverage than Matt Milano has this season. So maybe you see a bump up there. The area where
Milano makes up for a lot to cover up his coverage deficiencies, right?
Sure, of course. And we don't know whether or not the increased workload for Dotson, whether or not you're going to see a decrease in efficiency. More often than not, you do, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I have to look at the rest of the season schedule, but this could be something here or it could be nothing. But for now, until I see more, I'll keep my mirage or money decision until we get to said segment.
And that's fair. And I mean, if we want to keep
it's a play, right? Or it's a money, but I don't know that Dodson's a play, but I don't know that it's a money play.
Yeah, and the money of Mirage really is supposed to be, for the rest of the season, not just one particular week, I guess. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable that either one's going to see the majority. I could see, I don't want to call it a rotation because I don't think that's the smartest play, but I think we could see volatility in the snaps going forward. And that's something I want to avoid, like a Mirage. I think that we can keep the money of Mirage going with one of the names that you touched on earlier. And I think I know the answer already then, Hollywood, is one AJ Epinesa, who has really, I mean, I will say Jorge and I had the conversation a little earlier in that, hey, is it going to be him? We said it could be Leonard Floyd. They both had two sackles. Holy shit. 2 sacks that game. I don't know what a sackle is, but I'm liking it. We're going to go with it. I know you're the one.
Gallon of wine, and you're the one calling things a sackle. So that's
well, you watch. It's going to get trendy. Trending on Twitter is a sackle tomorrow, so get ready. AJ Epinesa, the pride of Edwardsville High School, right across the river here. Go ahead, Hollywood. He is money. Question is, how much money are you? Would you have broken the bank to acquire his services in Fab this week?
I don't know about broke the bank, but I was put a big chunk on him. Luckily for me, I don't have to do that because I had him just about in every league already. So he was somebody that I was already high on. I think you think of him more as a pass rusher, tackle guy, but he's already got an interception he returned for a touchdown. He's got 6 PBUs, so it's not like he's a complete liability in coverage. So if you're needing that kind of linebacker, then I think he's definitely worth putting a good chunk on. I wouldn't go crazy, but I would put a good enough chunk to try to win him.
Mm-hmm. And I'll pivot to you then, Jorge. Another guy big on the waiver wire, maybe not just this past week, should have been already rostered if they had listened to Shoot the Gap or followed any of our free waiver wire articles over at fantasyandframes.com, where Jorge brings you his waiver wire plays on Tuesday. And one of those names earlier mentioned was Kevon Wallace, safety for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm guessing he's money for you, Jorge. But again, is this a Taylor Swift concert ticket size money investment, or is this just a, I don't know, better comparison. Sorry.
That's as long as Buda Baker's out, it is. We've been saying the box snaps. I wrote it last week in the waiver wire article, like you were talking about. Hey, Kayvon Wallace, the box snaps are there. The coverage snaps are not there, so he's specifically helping out in run defense. I think I wrote it verbatim. Get him now if he's still available because the blow-up game is coming. And then what happened? It happened in week 5 where he had 10 tackles total, 7 solo, 3 assists, hit an interception, pass defended, tackle for loss. I mean, this guy was playing all over the place. And let's face it, the Cardinals are probably going to be on the losing end more often than not this season. Therefore, more opportunity, more time on the field to make plays and clean up in garbage time situations. So as long as I said Buda Baker is still, as long as he's not there, Kayvon Wallace, I think you don't pass up that opportunity that's there.
Yeah, his 185 box snaps or at the line. Next closest is Cameron Curl with 179. So and Cameron Curl has been the guy that I think there's been a case to be made as the DB1 because of that as a result. And I think Kayvon Wallace is one that should and will continue to creep up that list. So hopefully you guys read Jorge's article. You already have him on your team and you don't have to scramble. But if you do, you can pause, jump onto your page, go get Wallace, pick him up, then send Jorge a DM with a thumbs up and say thank you.
With his 11.1% missed tackle rate.
I don't care.
Well,
they don't have depth to even worry about replacing it with anything. We just said it earlier. Andre Chicheri.
If I could go back to AJ Epineza for a second, I want to bounce a couple questions off of you guys. They brought Leonard Floyd over in free agency. He has experience playing opposite Von Miller. We saw Von Miller return for a snap, I think it was last week. So not a lot of work, but they're going to be working him back into rotation, and assuming he can get to the level that he was last year. A lot of questions, on this defensive line. Leonard Floyd, does he move opposite of where he's playing now and lets Von Miller take up his usual role? What happens to Epineza? Do they start splitting snaps? Floyd and Epineza, they both last week, or at least let me pull it up here. The past month, 10 total pressures for Epineza, 9 for Floyd, but 3 sacks for Epineza, 4 sacks for Floyd. Do they start cannibalizing each other? What happens when Rousseau comes back? Does that mess up everything? We saw last year with Rousseau and Von Miller, they were just a pass rushing fantasy stat padding tandem. If you had to put your money on somebody, whether it's Epineza or Floyd going forward, I guess, who would you, Hollywood, let's start with you. Who would you want to invest in the rest of the season?
I still invest in Epineza because I think his tackle numbers in the position, I know he's an outside linebacker, but he's going to get more tackles out there, right? Plus dropping in coverage, where I think Floyd is just a pass rusher at best. I know he can stop the run or whatever, but if he doesn't get those sacks, then his fantasy value kind of just isn't worth shit, right? Where I think Epineza, he's getting the tackle. He can get some of those tackle numbers and still be an effective fantasy option for you.
Yeah, that's the one thing with Epineza. He's, I think, from an athletic standpoint, a little bit more so than Floyd. But Epineza's he's had a history of going missing at times with pass rush, but when he shows up, he's definitely more of the boomer bust. If you're looking for a floor, I would say Floyd's probably a little bit more of a floor play, but I don't think you can look for floor. I think that when you're looking for defensive linemen, that you say, ability to stop the run, but neither one of them are big tackle volume guys. So, and look, Preston said that he just put fab on him, guys. Kayvon Wallace. Hopefully that's not, is that in our league? Uh-oh. Are we in the league together?
No, I don't think
IDP
whatever
league.
league this is, you did a good job there, Preston.
Good job, Preston.
Exactly.
Hopefully no one else is listening right now. Or we'll just,
Even if it is in your all's league, it's still a great job.
it really is. Which is what you're supposed to do. Take advantage of situations. Let's take advantage of some situations with some players in who are fading, who are wanting to play. I want to get the first one off just so that you guys have a chance to cleanse your palate, go to the bathroom, dry heave if you have to, because that is Marcus Davenport, Minnesota Vikings. It has been a long road for Marcus Davenport to finally make the fades and plays segment of any podcast / IDP recommendation site. And Marcus Davenport, in my opinion, is there. And I mean, the last 2 weeks, he's been fantastic. We've seen 7 pressures. More importantly, what we're seeing is that 70 to 80% snap share over the last 2 weeks. So he's getting plenty of time. Having Danielle Hunter lining up opposite of you is always a good recipe for success. Another good recipe for success is going against the Chicago Bears offensive line. Their offensive line has been, dating back to the beginning of last year, honestly, per dropback, maybe the worst offensive line of football. Jorge, I know your Commanders are trying to give them a run for their money, but I will tell you, it's close.
If the Titans would like to say hi, by the way.
Yeah. It looks like collectively those two, but I will tell you, in the periodic table of elements, boron, if that was an element, would be very. It would not just be semi-permeable; it would be totally permeable and allow many things to run through it. The former Missouri Tiger is having a rough last couple weeks. 13 pressures allowed over his last 3 games, 12 over his last 2. And yes, for my chemistry fans out there, I did do a periodic table of elements, and I know boron is not an element yet, but it is soon to be one when Marcus Davenport destroys him for another couple sacks and a good game. Marcus Davenport, gross, everyone I know, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a little peek behind the curtain here. As soon as Nate had his IDP start and sit article posted, which, by the way, you should head over to fantasyandframes.com and check that out, as well as his IDP roundup, taking a look at the previous week's IDP action from every single game, giving you a glimpse into every single fantasy relevant play here for IDP purposes. Going back to the start and sit article for IDP, I saw Marcus Davenport on the start, and I immediately texted Nate, and I was like, how much is your skin burning having to type in the words Marcus Davenport and start? And you responded back, oh, I totally love this. This is an amazing thing. I can't wait. And I'm like, bullshit. You do not feel. I mean, it's a great play this week. I'm not saying that's not. I'm just like, with all the years of hoping that he would turn it on and consistently in New Orleans and it not work out. I mean, it has to burn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like when you have certain failures that you want to do well. And I had wanted Davenport to do well over the years. I was pretty heavily invested in him. I had high hopes. I kept trying to will it into existence that he was going to be better and actually live up to the metrics and everything else. And then injury just would take it away. So yeah, you're right though. It's hard to believe. I don't want to believe him. And I mean, I have him and Chase Young on one team together, and you want to talk about holy hell. It is, I mean, that's a rough one. So, all right. So that's my fade.
He's your Michael Gallup.
I mean, yeah, there you go. He's my play.
Yeah.
Jorge, give me one of your plays.
So he was in my sack lunch last week. Van Ginkel, Jalen Phillips, back-to-back weeks of limited practice and questionable tag heading into Sunday's matchup. And Andrew Van Ginkel, I'm just going to call him Van Ginkel from now on because I like the upward inflection, over the past 4 weeks has tallied 4 sacks on 18 total pressures, as well as giving you a steady floor of 11 solo tackles per PFF during that time frame, which ties him for the 7th most amongst edge rushers. We do the Fantasy Pros ECR competition. We do our rankings over there. in points per game using Fantasy Pro scoring. That's 14.8 points per game. Tyler Moton, or shouldn't be on a team person, has allowed 17. That's harsh. I'm sorry. It's the little tail line talking. I apologize. He has allowed the 17 pressures over the past month, third most allowed amongst offensive linemen, specifically tackles. While he hasn't given up a sack, however, that 17 pressures, 0 sacks. So I mean, there is that concern. But with Van Ginkel's 17% pressure rate, something telling me, or win rate rather, excuse me, something tells me the streak is going to keep going, and Van Ginkel's going to get you a sack and be very fantasy viable for you this week.
I think that there's a good possibility of that as well. He's been just too hard to ignore. And it's so crazy is just the lateral effects of one move by Jalen Phillips not being on the field. It creates value for David Long, and it creates value for Andrew Van Ginkel. And it's like it's a big move. It's a shift that's changed the paradigm of IDP relevancy in Miami, because I wanted to believe that Jerome Baker's done, and then he comes in and has a great week last week. But Hollywood, I know we've talked about your play and your play from going on AJ Epinesa, and is an excellent play. Who are you fading this week?
Well, I'm fading Khalil Mack, right? And it's the reason I say that it's kind of simple, because the Chargers were off last week, right? But the week before, he had the game of ages, really. I mean, even for him, that was a monster game, 6 sacks, right? So I kind of feel like that's the last impression that everybody has of him right now. It's what have you done for me lately? And what that was a 6-sack game. They're not taking into account he was off last week. So I feel like if you're chasing those sack numbers, you're going to be disappointed, because he's not going to do that again, right? I mean, the odds are very, very slim. So, I mean, he may get a sack, and that's all well and good, but I think the expectations after that game is so high that people need to kind of break check and come back down to earth on him just a little bit. So for that, I'm going to fade him. And they're playing the Cowboys, so I mean, he could stumble into a sack against Dak, right? So,
yeah,
against Tyron Smith, I don't know. That's a good match.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough draw, but I mean, with how Dak plays, I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility to get back.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. Is you have to go into he has the likelihood is not on matchup versus the person in front of him and overall ability. We're not questioning Khalil Mack's ability, but one outlier week, it's hard for people to, when looking at both, because they see the upside. You go, man, I don't want to bench, a 3-sack week. That's hard to do. It's like with Josh Allen, but Josh Allen's a better week in and week out performer. Yeah, I get that, man. That offensive line is extremely good. And, and that goes and ties in exclusively to my fade, which is Quinnen Williams with the New York Jets. My defensive tackle won on the season. I was after Hard Knocks. You want to talk about a Hard Knocks bump? My God, I was so excited to watch him, like that's 11 or whatever they were doing, I think, with the sacks that he had. And I'm waiting for him to replicate that. It hasn't happened yet. I know that any given week for him could be that week. I also, when we joking around about the 11s, he barely has, I mean, he has 12 solo tackles. He has 17 tackles. The tackles have been there, but really the 3 tackles for a loss for him, I think, is low based on the fact that at this point last year, I think he was trending a little bit positive, but the sacks haven't been there. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to for this particular matchup for me, is against the Philadelphia Eagles. He's going to have to try to beat one of the better interior, one of the best offensive lines in all of football. Jalen Hurts, despite, those running quarterbacks like that, especially early on, we saw him get sacked early when the offense wasn't clicking entirely. But now that offense is clicking, He's still 15th in sacks. It just doesn't seem like a matchup that I want to push a defensive tackle and that volatility up. And if it's stopping the run game, good luck, because DeAndre Swift is, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage before anybody makes first contact. So the Jets are just banged up. It's going to be a bad matchup all around. I'm avoiding Quentin Williams this week. So, Jorge, who are you avoiding?
That is a great question. So in Hollywood, I'm sorry for who I'm about to talk about. But
he knows.
Being a Titans fan,
I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
I'm a little sorry. I'm kind of sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I'm a little bit sorry. Look, we remember 2 years ago Harold Landry for the Tennessee Titans, right? And then we remember a year ago heading into week 1, boom, was it ACL, done for the year. He's coming back. He's taking on the Titans are taking on the Baltimore Ravens this week. He should be lining up against Patrick Bakari for the Baltimore Ravens, who for the past month has allowed the 5th most sacks and the 13th most pressures amongst offensive tackles. And you would think this is a perfect opportunity for Harold Landry to have a get-right game. There was concern early on in the season, like, is it Autry who's going to be moving to left end and Arden Key staying at right? Last week we saw both Nico Autry and Arden Key split reps at defensive end right, and it was Landry who got all the snaps at left, and yet he only had like a 4.7% win rate against offensive linemen. Like, I don't care how good the matchup is. Like that is horrible. I don't know whether it's just one of those cliche sayings. It's like, well, it takes, a year after the surgery to be back to 100%, like they say about wide receivers, you know what I mean? It's like, It's not the year after they come back. It's the second year after they're coming off of the injury. Okay. I'm not a doctor. I can't speak to any of that. All I know is I'm looking at the performance and it's not looking good. And as much as we want to have that, big name associated with, defensive end, defensive lineman production, even against the choice matchup against Patrick Bakari, I'm fading Harold Landry this week.
Yeah. The 4.7 win rate, if that in itself isn't bad, let's look at the season as a whole and think, all right, well, maybe the pressures, that's got to be somewhere, right? That's a 4% pressure rate. So when the two combine, and sometimes you have outliers, sometimes you have real low pressure rate but good win rate just because they're beating their person in front of them, but the quarterback is moving to the away from them, or they're chip blocked once they get past, whatever the case may be. In this case, where you both are 4%, it's rough, guy. I'm sorry, Hollywood. I know you see it every day, and it's not just a tape thing. It's metrics. We're seeing it all around. And so I'm going to guess when we go through and we give our final little segment, which is always one of our favorites, is the sack lunch, who we decide who's going to get a sack in this upcoming week. And we have a tally running for the end of the season. Loser overall, or the winner overall gets a lunch provided to them from the losers. And last week, Jorge joined in the party a couple weeks back, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt that there'll be a weighted average of some sort. You got the sack last week because you decided to go with Andrew Van Ginkel, I think is how you're supposed to say it, if I'm not mistaken. Who is your sack lunch this week?
It is Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals lining up against Stone Forsythe of the Seattle Seahawks. Over the past month, Forsythe has allowed 12 pressures, 3 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. During that same time span, Hendrickson, 8 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, 11 pressures, and a 21.6% win rate. This is going to be a worse clubbing than when Clubber Lang gave it to Rocky on their first match.
Wow. I gotta tell you, I said it in talking about when going over the rankings earlier this week, is that the matchup Stone Forsythe, I don't think his real name's Stone. I think that they just looked at his footwork and assumed that his feet were caked in stone and or lead and or any other heavyweight, because he does not have the best footwork. And Trey Hendrickson, I think, is going to exploit that entirely, just like you said. I am going to take advantage of a situation that I like. Let's take one of the nastiest, best edge rushers in the NFL, in Max Crosby, and let's line him up against the lowest graded offensive lineman per PFF of all offensive linemen, not just tackles, not just right tackles, not just, right tackles on teams in the AFC East, but the lowest graded offensive lineman in the NFL over the last 2 weeks. Let's extend it out. All right, Nate, you're just cherry picking. You're taking the offensive lineman. The last 2 weeks had a couple rough go. Let's go throughout the entire NFL season. And he's the third worst in the NFL. His name is Vidarion Lowe. He is the New England Patriots right tackle. Max Crosby lines up against him. Max Crosby will bring his lunch pail to work. He is the epitome of lunch pail line defensive end. And I am very grateful that he is going to support Team Markham this week in the sack lunch. Hollywood, your turn.
Yeah, I love both of those, right? Great choices. So I went with Ed Oliver, defensive tackle for
He's
Buffalo.
awesome.
Plays a little end from time to time, right? McDermott likes to move these guys around. And they're facing the New York Giants. And I probably shouldn't say anything else because that'll probably tell you all you need to know.
That is exactly right.
They have gave up 29 sacks in 5 games. 28 on Jones, 1 on Tyrod. But, man, that offensive line is horrid. It's horrid. And Oliver's having, by far, his best season so far, right? This is kind of what we expected from him coming out. So he's got 4 sacks on the season, which I believe is second on the team behind Floyd. I think it is. Yes. And he's not just a sack machine right now. He's getting a lot of tackles. He's got 24 tackles. 15 of those are solo. So he's got 9 quarterback hits. So, yeah, I wanted to I know I've picked some higher names in the past. So I thought I'd challenge myself a little bit and pick someone just a little bit less off. So I'm going to go, but the matchup's just too good with what New York is doing. So
love it.
Again, he probably stumbles over somebody and gets a sack this week with that line. So Ed Oliver, I think, is the play.
Oh my God. I love the play. Ed Oliver is each time I look at my rankings for Fantasy Pros at defensive linemen, I think I've moved Ed Oliver up at least one spot the last 5 times each time. And I'm scared to go back and look at it again, because if I keep looking at it, eventually he's going to be the defensive lineman 7. And I'm going to be a little worried until I'm not, because he has 2.5 sacks and 4 tackles against that Giants. If the Giants can stay on the field that long, I don't know how many.
Right.
I mean, they got to get, you're supposed to be able to play 3 snaps per down before punting it, but I'm not sure if they can hold the ball. Poor Tyrod is in a rough spot this week. We shall see.
Yeah.
But
quick thing there, him and Derek Brown, Oliver and Derek Brown, those two have been absolute monsters this year. And if you're playing position-specific leagues, you better get one of those two, because they're going to win somebody a championship. But speaking of our sack lunch, for our gambling people, the last month I've been looking at it, and there's a lot of money to be made on sack props. Mm-hmm. The key is, from what I've seen, the key is getting in on it early, right? So don't wait till game day. Don't wait till Sunday to do it. Go right now and see what those props are, because you can get major stars a lot of times at over under a quarter sack. And I said it tonight a couple of times. If you're really good, even if you have a horrible matchup, right? If you're really good, odds are you can stumble into a half a sack, right? And it's going to pay out for you every time. I mean, I saw it a few weeks ago with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I took both of them. Both of them were at a quarter of a sack, and they both got it, right? So if you're into that kind of thing and you look at the defensive sack or defensive player props for sacks, I've noticed that they do change. So if you get in on them early, you can get that quarter or a half. But usually by the time game day gets there or the day before, I've noticed it'll change to a half sack or a full sack. So if you can get in on it early, you can make some little coin there.
Cool. I look forward to trying to turn your knowledge into my money. And then hopefully as a result, I'll be sending you lunch somewhere. I'm sure you or Jorge would love to win this bet, but we got about 12 weeks left. So we'll keep this going. And we will keep Shoot the Gap going next week. Same time, we will talk about that because we might just switch this to Fridays. We might keep it Wednesdays. I'm sorry for the volatility for anybody, but I do thank you for listening. So for Jorge, for Hollywood, I'm Nate. We will catch you on the flip side.
And this is where he doesn't hit